It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Jones, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about you as the parents and caregivers of young people. Is it your fault that young people are in the mental and emotional condition that they are in today? It may be your fault, believe it or not. Now, this is a question that crosses my mind anytime something goes wrong with my own children is what am I doing that's contributing to this emotional outburst, the struggle session, as we like to call them, the frustration within our kids? Is it something that I've done or I haven't done that's contributing to the problem? And I came across an article this week that I want to respond to on today's podcast. The article was in MSN, and that article was entitled Parents Who Make This Simple Mistake Raise Mentally Weak Children, says psychiatrist. You are increasing your self esteem by stealing theirs. Now, that is one heck of a title. It definitely points the fingers at caregivers and parents. And I believe that this article probably will go viral if there weren't so many other big things happening this week, because it's definitely taking a aim at parents, which parents typically don't appreciate. But in the article, I'm going to just read a little section here where the psychiatrist talks about the mentally weak children. And the psychiatrist is also an author by the name of Daniel Amen. And what the psychiatrist is saying, also the psychiatrist is an author and wrote this book. And what the crux of the book is that parents are too often overdoing it for their kids, and what it has done is led to mentally weak children. And it gets into kind of the concepts that we've heard that have become popular over time, things like helicopter parents, things like we don't allow children to deal with adversity. Every child gets a participation trophy or ribbon. We don't allow children to have a lot of free play. We monitor their play. We don't allow children to roam around town or roam around the cities like we used to. And it's contributing to this kind of weak mindset within children. This also correlates with Dr. Carol Deswick's book, The Growth Mindset, where we have this concept of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And there's something we've talked about here on the podcast, but ultimately, the growth mindset is aimed at encouragement and how that's a valuable thing to give to a child to help them develop in this world. And I think what has happened is we have over encouraged our children without allowing them to bump their heads and to have some failure, to have some adversity, to have some things that just don't go right or don't feel good take place. And what that's done is when things don't go well and that parent and caregiver isn't there, a lot of young people don't know what to do. They go to the extreme of their emotions because there's no parent there to run that interference and that filter. And ultimately, what it leads to is what the young people are currently calling crashing out. We're seeing a lot of people who are having these emotional turmoil, over exaggerated situations where sometimes they're being committed. Sometimes they're having mental health, kind of like they're having manic situations and dynamics they're having mental health crisis take place. Sometimes we're seeing extreme isolation, we're seeing violence, we're seeing a lot of things. And what this author's saying is, it's your fault, parents. It's because you brought this upon yourself with your parenting techniques, and this is just a ramification of how we've decided to parent our children from the 1980s on. Now, I'm not gonna blame parents 100%. But I do think this author makes a very strong point and is getting at a problem that we have within our society. And I think that we've had a tip in the scale when it comes to the power differential amongst young people, parents, and caregivers, where young people have a lot more authority within the dynamic. Now, when I talk about power, I don't want to reference it in a space of abuse and saying that parents need to abuse their children to keep them in line. But what we've seen is that children, the leverage that parents used to have over their children has lessened. And we see this in so many different communities and different dynamics that a lot of children, they are running the household. A lot of children, there's some communities where the children are running the community. They run the schools, they run the after school programs, they run the rec centers and the parks. They run it. And they're 14, 13, 12 years old, right? They're these young kids who just dominate the social power dynamic amongst parents. And I do think that that's something that we have to be honest about and focus on. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast from the beginning is that parents need to be informed on what's happening, what's going on, to not maintain, a level of, again, abuse of power, but to have some leverage and some say so in what happens parenting, because we do play a critical role in the development of children. And if we're just leaving that development to happenstance, there are so many things out here, whether we're talking about online or in person in communities, that can become traps for young children, and young people can get harmed. So, how do we stay in the position of quote unquote authority and leverage to make sure that our children are being well taken care of? But let me share a few more points from this article that they're focusing on the issues. Here were some of the key points from the article: the overbearing nature of parents, where parents are, looking um, at their children more like projects than children, and where parents, they're projecting their own desires and their own anxieties onto their children. And what this is leading to is increased stress, feelings of inadequacy, and strain in relationships. And this is something that many of the clients that I've had over the years have dealt with. Even adults have dealt with this. We call that work, healing the inner child, where they're dealing with the childhood trauma that they've experienced even in adulthood. So this is a key issue to a lot of the mental anguish that people are feeling. Some of the key points that were highlighted in the article was overbearing parenting. So parents who will impose their own expectations may cause children to feel pressured, leading to low self-esteem and high levels of anxiety. We talked about emotional immaturity amongst parents, where parents lack the emotional maturity that they might need to prioritize the needs of their children, resulting in unpredictable behavior and lack of empathy. This can hinder a child's emotional development and ability to form healthy relationships. So, due to the emotional immaturity of the parent or caregiver, it is playing a direct role in the emotional development of the child. And then the third key point from the article was avoiding direct residuals. Or sorry, avoiding direct refusals. Sorry, refusals. I mean, the residuals are, we got a lot of kids dealing with a lot of mental health issues. The refusals is what we're talking about here. So some modern parents tend to avoid saying no to children. I've seen this. I've coached parents in how to say no to their children. That may sound weird for some of us who are a little older, who remember our parents telling us no before we even asked them the question. There's often the common joke that before, you go grocery shopping with one of your parents, they turn from the front seat to the back and say, before you even get in here, don't you ask for anything, because you ain't getting anything. Right? They give us the no before the question even comes up. But in today's world, children aren't getting the no. Children are getting whatever they want, and then they're throwing tantrums when they doesn't quite unfold the way they would like it to. And this is something that has become a big struggle. So some modern parents avoid saying no to children, aiming to foster autonomy, giving children autonomy. Now, you've heard me say this on the podcast. I am a fan of giving children autonomy. I do believe that children should have a voice and choice within their home, but it comes with restrictions. They shouldn't decide everything. They shouldn't have the final say so. But I do think that giving them some level of influence in the house is good. It's a healthy balance, though. I do think that the parents and the caregivers must maintain that leverage, because once it's gone, it's hard to put that toothpaste back in the bottle. So what this has done is it has led to a lot of parents who are attempting to set clear boundaries because that is essential for a child's sense of security and ability to cooperate. But it's led to difficulty with that because when you're not saying no and you're not setting the boundaries as an adult, and you're allowing the child to create not just the boundaries, but create the dynamic, your leverage is gone. So, what can parents do as we get towards the end of today's podcast and we talk about what has happened? What can we do? The first thing I want to say is this: we are in a space where we can reverse some of this, but also the culture that we have set up and what has been in motion is not going to be 100% reversed. I do think parents have a window where our influence and authority can still be maintained, but it's not going to be like your childhood. We have to just come to grips with that. There's too much technology, there's too many screens, and these kids have access to too much information that it will ever be like that again. So you have to find your balance in parenting. And your balance is going to require you to have both benefits for yourself as a parent and sacrifices. And I know that's a hard thing to accept. But in this world, if you want to be an effective parent, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your old thinking on what parents are supposed to do, some of the things that you enjoy, some of your time. You may even have to sacrifice knowing that something, not being right about something, because you might know exactly what the result's going to be, and the kid's going to try to do it anyway, even though it may not work, it may fail, and you're gonna have to allow that kid to bump their head and let life teach them the lesson sometimes. And that's a hard thing for us to do, but it is a thing for us to try. So here are three things that I want to recommend to parents and caregivers to help navigate this current youth culture that we have, where we have this dynamic of tipped parent-child dynamics, power dynamics. The first thing is set clear boundaries, establish consistent limits, help children feel secure, and understand expectations. You got to set those boundaries. If you haven't done so, you need to start doing it today. Start with the things that are easy to point out and that probably are clear boundaries. Do not, like, one of the boundaries I have in my house is we don't allow the children to walk through the house with shoes on. Now, they have what we call house shoes or slippers. They can put those on and walk anywhere they want, but they're not supposed to take those outside or in the garage because we don't want to attract a lot of dirt in the home. So, if they're getting ready for school or they're going to go outside and play and they're like, oh, I forgot my gloves upstairs or I forgot something, they need to take their shoes off before they go upstairs. That's a clear boundary. It's a practice. But guess what? I also keep that same practice as an adult. I take my shoes off. I can't tell the kids to take their shoes off in the home and I'm walking around in my, sneakers. That's not going to happen. That now I'm losing because I'm being hypocritical, and that's going to create a power struggle. The second tip for today is encourage independence. Now you're like, how do I do that when these kids are just, they're running over us all, running all over us? Well, allow children to explore within minimal interference fosters resilience and problem solving skills. These kids do need to figure out how to get stuff done. You can't solve all their problems. And I know it's probably easier for you to, but sometimes you just gotta let them struggle with things. And that's okay. I do it all the time. My middle child hates it. She's 9 years old. She hates when I don't solve her problems. She expects me to solve her problems. And I tell her, I'm not gonna solve this problem. You are very intelligent. You got this. And then usually I let her try things. She'll figure it out most of the time. But usually I let her do at least 2 shots before I even assist on anything because she just expects me to like lace her shoes. I'm just using shoes as an example or whatever. She just wants me to just figure it out for her. Can't be like that all the time. And then the third thing is model emotional maturity, demonstrate healthy emotional responses teaches children how to manage their own emotions effectively. We have to be the models that we want our children to see. Um, if you're preaching one thing and doing another, it's gonna just widen the gap that's already present in many homes and communities, and these children will never respect you. They will never listen to you. So by modeling behaviors, you're helping to create trust. And I know if you come from the old school, parents didn't care if their children trusted them or not. But in this new world, that is one of the biggest things that we can do is leverage the trust that our kids have in us. Because once it's gone, like I said earlier, it's hard to put that toothpaste back in the bottle. When that trust is gone, good luck trying to be an influence. That kid is going to continue to figure things out on their own. And we see a lot of this happening in communities all across the United States where young people are in some of the most dangerous dynamic situations, things that we don't want them to be a part of. But the reason is they don't have trusting adults in their lives. So that level of resiliency that they probably need in their development is not quite there. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. Hopefully, I shared something constructive for you all. There's 3 ways that you can get in contact with us. The first way is through our Facebook group. You just go ahead and search "It Is Not Your Fault" podcast in Facebook, and you can find us right there. You can find tips like the ones I share here, other podcast episodes, and resources in the Facebook group. Second place you can find us is at my personal website, which we'll be getting an update very soon. I'm looking forward to this, where you can ask me questions or get up information. That's www.jegna.org, jegna.org, jegna.org. And if you thought this podcast was helpful and you would like to get some other helpful information, we have an actual network of great podcasters, and that network is ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. That's ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. Feel free to go right on over there and subscribe to all of the amazing podcasts that we have on the network. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. Again, I'm Brandon Jones. This is It Is Not Your Fault podcast. Be safe, be constructive, and be well, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
To check out previous episodes of It's Not Your Fault, or to learn more about Brandon Jones, log on to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.